Guys, down the hill.
That's the voice of a killer, captured on his victim's phone. For years, this one haunting command was the main clue in the horrific murder of two little girls, a mystery that stumped investigators and an entire nation. It's a case that started with a simple photo on social media and ended in a tragedy that would scar a small town forever. But this isn't just a story about unanswered questions anymore. It's the story of how one heroic, quick-thinking act from a teenage girl ultimately brought her killer to justice. This is the story of the Delphi murders and the long, agonizing road to justice for Abby and Libby. A day off, a fateful walk. Delphi, Indiana, is the kind of small, tight-knit town where everybody knows everybody. With a population under 3,000, it's a place defined by its historic courthouse, quiet streets, and a feeling of safety that people cherished. It was the very last place you'd expect to become the setting for a crime that would grab the nation's attention. On Monday, February 13, 2017, schools in Delphi were closed for a snow makeup day, giving the local kids an unexpected day off. Two of those kids were 13-year-old Abigail Williams and 14-year-old Liberty German, best friends everyone knew as Abby and Libby. Abby was artistic and kind, with a quiet sort of strength. Libby was vibrant and outgoing, a talented athlete who played softball and soccer. They were inseparable, doing what eighth graders do, sharing secrets, navigating school drama, and posting about their lives on social media. That afternoon, Libby's older sister, Kelsey, dropped the girls off near the Monon High Bridge Trail, a popular local spot known for its rugged beauty. The main attraction was an old, abandoned railroad bridge towering over Deer Creek. For the kids in town, it was a place for adventure and a perfect backdrop for photos. The plan was simple. The girls would hike for a couple of hours, and Libby's dad would pick them up. It was a normal outing, the kind of thing that had happened 1,000 times before in their quiet little corner of the world. At 2:07 p.m., Libby posted one last, haunting photo to her Snapchat. It showed her best friend, Abby, bundled up in a jacket, walking ahead of her on the worn wooden planks of the Monon High Bridge. The sky above was a pale winter gray. Below them, the dense woods stretched out in every direction. It was the last picture ever taken of Abby alive, a final, fleeting moment of normal life before their afternoon walk turned into a nightmare. The vanishing and the discovery. As the afternoon ticked by, the first feelings of panic started to set in. When Libby's father, Derek German, showed up at the trailhead to get the girls, they weren't there. He tried their phones, but the calls went straight to voicemail. He walked the nearby trails, shouting their names, but all he heard back was the wind. Soon, other family members joined the search, their calls growing more desperate as the sun went down. By 5:30 p.m., with still no sign of the girls, they were officially reported missing. The Carroll County Sheriff's Department, along with local firefighters and volunteers, immediately started searching the area. They tried to ping the girls' cell phones, but the devices were either off or the batteries had died. The search pushed on through the cold night, fueled by a terrible, sinking feeling. The entire town of Delphi seemed to be holding its breath. This was a town where kids played outside until dark without a worry. Two teenage girls didn't just disappear from a popular trail in the middle of the day. The next morning, Valentine's Day, the search started again with even more urgency. Volunteers from all over the county joined police, combing through the thick woods and steep ravines around the bridge. Around noon, a volunteer searching along the north bank of Deer Creek, about half a mile from the bridge, made a heartbreaking discovery: the bodies of two young girls. Later that afternoon, at a grim press conference, Indiana State Police confirmed the community's worst fears. The bodies were identified as Abigail Williams and Liberty German. A double homicide investigation was now underway. The news hit Delphi like a shockwave. How could this happen here? Who could do something so monstrous to two innocent kids? The town's sense of security was gone, replaced by fear and a burning question: was a killer living among them? The ghost on the bridge. In the wake of the murders, investigators had a tough road ahead. The crime scene was remote, there wasn't much evidence, and they had no suspects. But they soon realized they weren't starting from zero. They had something incredible, something Libby German had left them herself, a message from beyond the grave. In an unbelievable act of bravery, Libby had used her smartphone to record her killer. As the strange man got closer on the bridge, she had the presence of mind to open her camera and hit record. That one single act gave investigators their three most important clues. First, the image. Police pulled a grainy, pixelated still photo from the video. It showed a man, his face partly hidden, walking with purpose along the bridge. He was wearing blue jeans, a blue jacket, and a brown hoodie. His hands were in his pockets, and his head was down. He looked so ordinary, he was almost forgettable, but his approach was completely menacing. He quickly became known to the world as the Bridge Guy. Second, the video. The full clip, just 43 seconds long, showed the terrifying final moments of the girl's encounter with the man. You can see him walking steadily toward them on that narrow, decaying bridge, closing the distance with a chilling calm. The footage was shaky and the quality was poor, but what it meant was crystal clear. This was the man who had confronted Abby and Libby. And third, the audio. This was the most chilling clue of all. Pulled from that same video, a man's voice can be heard, low and raspy, giving a three-word command: "Guys, down the hill." The phrase was short, but it was dripping with evil. It was the sound of a predator taking control, a voice that would haunt the investigation, the families, and a horrified public for years. Days later, police released the Bridge Guy photo and a short clip of the audio, hoping someone would recognize the man or his voice. The evidence went viral. The case blew up into a national story, and tips started pouring in by the thousands. There was one other crucial piece of evidence found at the scene, something that would become incredibly important years down the road. Lying near the girls' bodies, investigators found a single, unspent, .40 caliber bullet. It hadn't been fired from a gun, but had been manually cycled through one. At the time, they didn't know how significant it was, but it was carefully collected, a silent witness just waiting for its moment. A frustrating hunt and a community on edge. With the Bridge Guy picture and the down the hill audio out there, everyone, police and the public, thought an arrest would happen any day. How could someone see that photo, hear that voice, and not know who it was? But days turned into weeks, then months, and then years, with no breakthrough. The Delphi murders became one of the most frustrating and closely watched cold cases in modern American history. The investigation was huge. Thousands upon thousands of tips flooded in. Every lead was tracked down, Every person of interest was questioned. Still, the bridge guy's identity remained a mystery. In July 2017, investigators released a composite sketch of a man they believed was the main suspect. He looked middle-aged, with a goatee and a stern expression, wearing a cap. This face became linked to the case for years. But then, in a confusing twist in April 2019, police held another press conference. They released a second, completely different sketch of a much younger-looking man. They announced this new sketch was now their main focus. The change caused a lot of confusion. Had the police been looking for the wrong person for 2 years? The superintendent of the Indiana State Police, Doug Carter, made an emotional, direct plea to the killer, who he said was probably hiding in plain sight. "We believe you are hiding in plain sight," Carter said, his voice full of anger. "For more than 2 years, you never thought we would shift gears to a new investigative strategy, but we have." He also released a slightly longer audio clip and revealed that the killer had likely staged the crime scene in a specific way. Through all of these long years, the families of Abby and Libby lived with an unimaginable pain. They channeled that grief into a relentless fight for justice, appearing in countless interviews, keeping their girls' memories alive, and begging the public for help. The community of Delphi rallied around them, holding vigils and fundraisers, refusing to let the case go cold. "Today is the day" became a hopeful mantra for the families and their supporters, the day an arrest would finally happen. The case also created a massive community of online detectives. True crime forums and social media groups were filled with people from all over the world dissecting every piece of evidence. While they meant well, the sheer amount of speculation and bad information sometimes made the official investigation even harder. But despite all the public attention and the hard work of law enforcement, the killer remained a ghost, and the families of Abby and Libby could only wait and wonder if justice would ever come. The arrest hiding in plain sight. For over 5 years, Abby and Libby's killer was a phantom, a grainy figure on a bridge known only by his chilling voice. The case had gone cold. Then, in October 2022, everything changed. And when the arrest finally came, it was a shock that nobody saw coming. The suspect wasn't a drifter or a stranger. He was a local man, living and working just miles from the crime scene. A man who had been hiding in plain sight all along. Richard M. Allen, a 50-year-old pharmacy technician at the local CVS in Delphi, was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. The news stunned the small town. Allen was married with no serious criminal record. He was a quiet but familiar face to many. In a bizarre twist, Libby's grandparents revealed that after the murders, Allen had processed photos for them at that CVS and didn't even charge them. So how did investigators finally land on Richard Allen after all those years? The answer was buried in the mountain of tips they had received right from the start. Back in 2017, just days after the murders, Allen himself had called the police. He admitted he was on the High Bridge Trail that same afternoon, February 13th, and claimed he saw 3 young girls but didn't talk to them. At the time, his tip was apparently lost in the shuffle. The break came in September 2022, when someone helping police go through old files stumbled upon Allen's original statement. That discovery made investigators take a much closer look at the quiet pharmacy tech. They re-interviewed Allen in October, and soon after, they searched his home. During that search, they found the key to the entire case. In a drawer, they discovered a .40 caliber pistol. Forensic experts got to work, comparing the pistol to that unspent bullet found between the girls' bodies 5 years earlier. It was a match. The bullet had been cycled through Richard Allen's gun. Suddenly, the ghost on the bridge had a name. The man in the grainy photo, the man who ordered 2 young girls down the hill, was, according to prosecutors, Richard Allen. He was arrested on October 26, 2022. After 2,086 days of waiting, the families of Abby and Libby finally had a face to direct their anger and grief towards. The mantra today is the day had finally come true. A trial of horrific details and bizarre theories, Richard Allen's trial began in the fall of 2024, and it unleashed a flood of horrific new details. For the first time, the public would hear the full, gruesome story of what happened to Abby and Libby in the woods that day. Prosecutor Nick McClelland laid out the state's case, built on 3 pillars: the bridge guy video, the bullet, and Allen's own confessions. He played the 43-second video for the jury, arguing Allen was undeniably the man on the bridge. He then presented the damning ballistics evidence, explaining how the unspent round from the scene was forensically linked to Allen's gun. But the most shocking revelations came from Allen himself. While waiting for trial, Allen had allegedly confessed to the murders over and over again in phone calls to his wife and mother, and to prison staff. The prosecution played the recordings. In one haunting call with his wife, Kathy, Allen could be heard saying, "I did it. I killed Abby and Libby." The prosecution also presented graphic testimony about the crime scene, revealing for the first time that both girls had their throats cut. Allen's defense team fought back, arguing the investigation was a mess from the start and that Allen was an innocent man being framed. They claimed his confessions weren't real, but the ramblings of a man whose mind was breaking down in prison. They also pointed out that none of Allen's DNA was ever found at the crime scene. In a truly bizarre twist, Allen's original lawyers had tried to introduce a wild alternate theory that Abby and Libby were victims of a ritualistic sacrifice by a pagan Norse group called Odinists. They claimed other men were the real killers, and that police had ignored evidence pointing to a cult. The judge, however, largely dismissed the theory as baseless, and it didn't play a major role in the trial. The jury was left to weigh it all. On one side, you had stunning confessions and a direct ballistics link. On the other, a defense claiming a botched investigation, forced confessions, and no DNA. After 17 days of testimony from 64 witnesses, the case went to the jury. The verdict and a community's relief. The jury deliberated for nearly 19 hours over 3 days. The entire town of Delphi and people all across the country who had followed the case for years held their breath. On November 11, 2024, the verdict came in. Richard Allen was found guilty on all counts. Cheers erupted from the crowd outside the courthouse. Inside, Allen showed little emotion, simply turning to his wife to see if she was okay. The families of Abby and Libby hugged, tears streaming down their faces. After almost 8 long, painful years, justice had finally been served. On December 20, 2024, Richard Allen was sentenced to 130 years in prison, 65 years for each life he took, to be served one after the other. The judge called his actions some of the most hideous she had ever seen. During the sentencing, family members finally got to speak, their words giving voice to years of grief. Libby's grandmother, Becky Patty, spoke about the peace the verdict brought, but knew it wasn't closure. "We got our verdict, but that didn't bring the girls back," she said. "It gives us a little bit of peace to know that he can never hurt another person again." Alan's lawyers say they plan to appeal, but for the families and the community, the verdict closed a long and agonizing chapter. The man who had haunted their town for years was unmasked and will now spend the rest of his life behind bars. The Delphi murders are a story of unbelievable tragedy, of two young lives cut short by a senseless, brutal act. For years, it was a story defined by a grainy photo and a chilling three-word command, a mystery that horrified a nation. But in the end, it's also a story of incredible courage and of a family and community that never gave up. Most of all, it's the story of Libby German, a 14-year-old girl who, in her final moments, had the presence of mind to pull out her phone and record her own killer. Her bravery gave investigators the key that would finally unlock the case and ensure the man on the bridge would face justice. Richard Allen is now in prison. While the verdict can't heal the wounds or bring Abby and Libby back, it has answered the haunting question of who. Justice, hard-won and long-awaited, has been served. CTA. The search for answers in the Delphi murders took years of dedication from law enforcement and the community. What are your thoughts on this complex and tragic case? Let us know in the comments below. And for more deep dives into the cases that have shaped our world, be sure to subscribe.